Welcome to Transform Now, the podcast brought to you by robotic process automation pioneer SS&C Blue Prism. Digital transformation has the potential to reshape the way companies service their customers, engage their employees, and manage their operations. Whether you're looking to develop strategies, tactics, or best practices to positively impact the future of work, or you're curious to see how other companies have successfully navigated their digital transformation programs, then this podcast is for you. We're here to help you transform now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brad Hairston with SS&C Blue Prism. Welcome to the Transform Now podcast. Today, I'm excited to have as my guest, Olivier Gomez, also known as OG, who is based in France and is the co-founder and CEO of IAC, a global advisory and services firm focused on intelligent automation. OG and I will be discussing his observations on the intelligent automation marketplace, as well as the unique way his firm uses an outcome-based approach to their client work. OG, welcome to the podcast. Why don't you start us out by telling our listeners more about yourself?
Yes, so thanks a lot for having me. I'm quite excited. This is quite cool. So yes, I'm located in France. I'm French. My name is Olivier Gomez. People call me OG. And yes, I've been doing automation for about, I would say 20 years, even before when we did not call it automation, we used to call it scripting, right? So I have a fairly extensive experience working for large corporation. And yeah, for a bit less than 2 years, we have our own company team of specialists focusing on what we call intelligent automation, right? So for people who are not really familiar with what intelligent automation is, there's a very important book called Intelligent Automation that describe what it is. And it is actually a mixture of automation and AI that we group together in order to achieve more result, more outcome.
And the book you referenced was written by Pascal Bornet, right? Who's one of your colleagues and co-founders.
Yes, you have to read this book. It's a very important book, I think. It describes very well, not just the technology, but also the impact on the society and the art of possible.
Awesome. Well, OG, glad to have you on the show today. And I noticed from your profile that you have a lot of experience working with the largest global SIs like DXC. You spent time at HP and EDS and IBM. How did your experience working with those companies shape your thinking around automation?
That's a good question, right? Because again, I'm used to working large environment. And one of the things that is really important to notice in large environment where you're trying to achieve scale, whether you try to deploy internally to optimize how you deliver and improve your bottom line, or whether you try to deploy within the client environment to optimize the client P&L, what we see is that number one, this is not a technology game. This is a people and data game. And this is really, really important. You know, there's always a tendency to jump to technology. There's always a tendency to be super excited by a piece of technology. And yes, technology is critical because it is the engine. But what is even more important is the whole management of change around the people, the whole capability to scale really depend on getting traction, and traction depends on people, right? So people is really, really something that we want to look at. And data. A lot of the success that I have seen across multiple large ports in 2000 is because it was data driven, right? So yes, we need to trust gut feeling. Yes, we need to talk to people, but if you do not have a data driven approach, then you are going to struggle to articulate clearly the overall picture and the overall benefit of doing automation. So again, technology to me comes once you have the people on board and once you have collected the data and analyzed the data, right? So point number two, I will be really quick. The second observation I have is that achieving scale, doing automation at scale is a totally different ballgame, right? So doing a couple of proof of concept left and right, having a bottom-up approach, identifying a few processes and demonstrating that the technology can work is one. Achieving a large-scale transformation, rolling out hundreds and thousands of bots and having a major impact on, very large amount of, let's say, transaction activity, people, is also sometimes a challenge because there's a lot of other things to take into account above and beyond just the technology, the people, and the data, right? So achieving scale is still a challenge out there on the market, and very few people have managed to crack that. And very interesting to see how they have done it, those that have successfully done that.
Right, right. And we're going to talk a little bit later more about scaling because I definitely want to pick your brain on that topic. Well, OG, you co-founded IAC, which stands for Intelligent Automation Company, I believe, correct?
Mhm. Yes.
You've co-founded that about 16 months ago. And I know you describe your company as an intelligent automation advisory and services firm. Tell
Mhm.
me more about the company and how it came together.
Yes. So what's really important to understand, right, is that there's a lot, and this is good, right? The automation market, the intelligent automation market is really booming, right? When we look at how well the market is doing, how fast it is growing, how many players we see, and how many new players we see, right? Now, one of the observations that we had was that unfortunately, there's still quite a few projects that do not achieve return on investment, right? And there's still quite a few, I would say, companies that are struggling to really achieve result. And one of the things that we wanted to do when we created IAC was to really have a business centric approach and a technology agnostic approach to the automation, right? So what does that mean? It means that, yes, we are a team of experts. Yes, we understand the technology. Yes, we are flexible. Yes, we can work with partners, large partners, software partners, even service partners. But the key point here is how we look at things is the business of automation, if that makes sense, needs to make sense. So
Right.
we always start the conversation with what does it mean for the business? Forget about the technology. This will come later. What does it mean for the business? How do we articulate a very strong business case that is going to be committed and that is going to really make a difference for the business? So the business angle of automation is what we are looking at, what we care about, and ensuring that the client has a return on his investment is really, really at the core of our DNA, right? And the best way to do that is to really start with, somehow forgetting about the tools and focusing about the rest. And once the rest is sorted out, what are the priorities? Where do we want to focus? What department? What process? What's the expected impact? And then later on, of course, we go back to technology. Of course, we look at solutioning. Of course, we look at the right vendors, leveraging the investment the client made. But the key point here, the key observation is, although it is tempting to jump to technology, let's focus on business and let's make sure that we have a business-centric, let's say, collaboration around automation with the client.
Interesting. So there's lots of companies out in the market implementing technology, including automation technology, but your firm is really more focused on the, as you said, the business of automation. So you addressed a gap in the market, I assume, is the way how you
Yes,
would put it.
I can give you a practical example, right?
Okay.
So, okay, we are going to implement a piece of technology. We are going to have everything ready. We're going to have the infrastructure, the cloud, the tool, the integration, everything. So what? Okay, so what?
Mm-hmm.
And then the next level is, okay, we are going to do all that and we are going to achieve a 30% automation rate. So what? From a business angle, all those things are not really meaningful. What's really meaningful is to take it to the next level, which is, what does it mean? Am I going to get some efficiency? Am I going to boost the revenue? Am I going to improve the customer satisfaction? And how do I prove it? How do I demonstrate that there is a direct correlation between the implementation of automation and the actual positive impact on the client P&L? That's what I mean by business-centric automation.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. So OG, let's talk about your unique approach to the work you do with clients and how you essentially put skin in the game, if you will. Can you explain that to us?
Yes. So what we believe is that we are now at a point, automation has been around for many, many years. I think first time I stopped working on RPA was 2014. So it's been around for a while, and it is not anymore a science project. It is not anymore what I called being part of the innovation phase. We are now entering the industrialized phase of automation. We are now, let's say, expecting result. And our approach here is to consider that it is about time to de-risk the client. So let me explain what I mean by that. De-risking the client means that the service provider needs to take some of that risk. And the way to do that is to push for what we call outcome as a service or outcome-based contract, right? So this is a notion that is not very well understood, not very often utilized. But when you look at it from a client standpoint, it makes total sense. It makes total sense that because we are in an industrialized phase of automation, we are able to share the risk between the client and the provider. And we are able to establish here a true win-win collaboration between the two. So this is how we do business with our client. We believe that we are now at a point where we have enough understanding, we as a company, but we as a market, enough understanding of this technology, enough experience, there's enough success cases, there's enough use cases available for us to be able to commit and to go as far as putting the commitment, the outcome, the business impact inside the contract. This is a fairly unique approach, how we put skin in the game. And of course, we have a very well-structured way to assess baseline and establish the contractual framework. But what we see happening is there's a lot of clients that are starting to understand that this is possible, and they are starting to demand that there is a share of the risk. Why should I take all the risk by investing all the money and not being sure that it will deliver result if I can end up in a situation where my service provider will take some of that risk? I am a lot more comfortable, obviously.
That's really a fascinating approach. So just to make sure I understand, once you've defined what you think the benefits could look like, then are you actually willing to put your fees at risk should they not achieve those benefits?
Yes. So let me translate my French English into proper English. So two things here. One, in order to do that, you need to have a very well-structured approach, actually a very strong data structure approach to the assessment of the environment, to the baselining of the environment, to the understanding of the environment, so that you can understand what can be improved, how far you can push the needle before you commit on anything. The way we do this is we use data from the client and the NDA, we apply data science to it. We come up with opportunity that we then map to our use case library. We have about 1,000 use case in our library, and we do the mapping between the opportunity that we find at the client side with what we consider is possible because it was done before. And by mapping this, then yes, we come up with, I would say, an overall number that we are willing to commit, right? Now, obviously, as we are committing contractually this, if we don't deliver, we don't get paid. That's what I mean by, outcome as a service. If you don't deliver, you don't get paid.
Okay, there it is. And do the majority of your customers choose to use this approach with you? Is that pretty much the standard protocol, the outcome-based approach?
So it is always perceived as complex to set up, potentially unclear. There's a lot of noise on the system. People are afraid of it. Actually, we explain very clearly to the client that this is good news for them. And then we go step by step and articulate how we analyze baseline and put that in the contract so that it is clear to them. And yes, once you spend the time articulating to the client that there's more value for them to go this way, then typically the clients say yes. There's always corner cases, situation where you cannot really baseline very, very properly the environment, but those corner cases are very minimum. Most of the time, when you do automation against a large process, against a given department, you can always establish win-win and outcome-based model with the client.
Okay, well let's go back to the topic of scaling, because I do want to hear more from you on that. There are thousands of companies that have embraced intelligent automation and they've seen benefit from it. And yet many of these organizations have not scaled across business unit and functional lines. What do you think are the key reasons behind that, OG?
Yeah. So this is a big topic, right? So this is a topic that is going to last for many, many years until everyone has reached a certain amount of scale, amount of penetration, amount of automation rate, whatever you want to call it. So there's obviously multiple reasons for that, but let me try to go through what I think are the most important reason, right? I think number one, and beside the standard, let's say, management of change, getting the leadership support and all those things, right? If we stick to, let's say, the technology itself, right? I think that number one, approaching automation bottom up is typically easier, meaning you identify pockets of opportunity left and right that you go address one by one. But this is typically not allowing to have a full scale, right? So the way to approach automation at scale is to approach it top down. So let me explain, right? So you have in front of you a client, large client, Fortune 2000, couple of $1 billion revenue. They will have typically an IT department, an HR department, a finance department, and so on and so forth. The way to approach it is to look at it at the department level and to look at it top down. So, okay, how many people are working in the HR department? Let's say 500. What are they doing? What tool are they using? What data is available? And by having an end-to-end view of this environment and by having a data-driven analysis of this environment, you can analyze and you can come up with a very large opportunity for this department. And by doing so, you automatically generate a large momentum from all part of the company, the CIO, the CFO, the operation manager, everyone that is going to have some sort of a target around this operation. And I think by doing that, you really generate a very large momentum that is forcing people to look at it holistically and end to end. And this way, you really force everyone to move towards this goal, which is a large number. The technology, the use cases, the bots, the implementation is typically following, but the target has to be exciting enough, has to be big enough, has to be trusted enough so that you generate that large momentum, and then scale is typically coming from it, right? So for me, top-down approach, large numbers, whole department, whole IT department, the whole HR department is the way to start. And then you can expand across multiple departments, not bottom up, small left and right,
Right.
2 FTE there, 1 FTE there. So that's really, really, really important to have that as a mindset. Point number two, I come back to what I said before. This is not, in order to achieve scale, right? This is not a technology project. This is not a technology project. This has to be a company transformation. So it is a subset of the entire digital transformation of any company. And it's a fairly large subset because it includes data, quality of data, implementing the right tools, the automation engine, implementing, the capability to discover the environment, implementing the capability to build, deploy, and very important, implementing the capability to run and maintain the environment, digital workforce that you have created, which we call automation ops. Right. So the point here is, if you have a top-down approach and you look at this as a big business opportunity, and you are not driven by technology choices, you are driven by business choices, then typically you generate enough momentum for the whole organization, not just the technical people who are happy to play with technology, but everyone else. People are looking at, the whole CFO team, the whole operation team, the whole sales team. Everyone needs to be super excited about this because they will see the positive impact of doing it at scale, right? And again, I have seen a few large companies doing that well and having a change in the culture, right? So it's like a reset at the cultural level of the company, not to be afraid of automation, but to see that this is giving them an edge to win on the market.
Right. I agree with both of those points, my friend, especially the first one, because I think too many companies do begin their journey with a use case mentality. They're going at one or two use cases they have in mind. They're not coming at it from the very beginning with a transformation mindset, as you said. I think that's a really good point. And the point about it's business led, it's not a technology project. Definitely agree with that as well. Let's talk about the automation discovery process and what that looks like in most of the companies that you're advising. And how do you see that relating to expectations around time to value? Could you touch on that?
Yes, I think this is very important, right? So if you look at automation as a life cycle, there's basically three phases, right? The discovery, which is the understanding of the environment, the basically the analysis and coming up with the pipeline of opportunity, which is, by the way, not a project. It's an ongoing activity.
Right.
It's a continuous loop here. It's not just a project. And then you have what everyone knows, which is the build. I play with technology. I solution, I build, I test, I deploy, I implement, and all of that. And then we have the automation ops, which is running it. But the discovery is really critical because what we see happening is that there's a lot of companies that have an automation engine. They have even a COE, they have a team of people, and they are struggling to feed them with a clean, prioritized pipeline of opportunity. So you see a lot of engines are basically not running at full speed, not
Right.
because the technology is not there, but because providing the input to the engine so it can automate is either broken or not
Yep.
working as good as it should. And this is the discovery process. So bottom line here, there's multiple situations, right? So in the old days, we used to have what I would call a consulting led type of discovery. So you put a lot of people out there, they talk to a lot of people, they do for a very, very a long time, multiple months, they do an assessment. I think we are past
Right.
that phase, that human-led discovery activity is being replaced and displaced by a data-driven approach. Now, the question is, not all companies are equal when it comes to the data, right? Some companies have a lot of good data, centralized, available, structured, semi-structured data, and some company, they don't really have data. So depending on how you stand here, you're going to be more or less automation friendly. But the key here is whether you have the data available and it's high quality, or you have the data available, but it's low quality, it's unstructured, it's not complete, or whether you don't have the data and you have to go create it using task mining capability and all these kind of things. The key point here is the discovery process nowadays needs to be data driven. This is key. The ideal situation is all your team in a given department are working from a central system, a central system of record, a central ticketing system. HR, I'm not going to give any technology name, but in HR, there's big names. In supply chain, there's big names. In support, there's big names. In service desk, in all of that, there's big. If you can plug into this, get the data, do the analysis of this data, the time to value for the discovery process is going to be way shorter, and the quality of the output of the discovery process is going to be way higher. So data is the name of the game here, and being able to apply data science, effective data science, to the data that is available or the data that is created at the client side is going to make the whole difference, right? And again, in terms of expectation here, if you are managing to get access to the data, if you have data science capability that you can apply using tools, platform, or data scientist, the outcome, the quality of your pipeline is going to be so much better. The number of opportunity, the size of the opportunity, and the way you prioritize the opportunity is going to be so much better that when you are going to feed that into your automation engine, your automation program, you are going to see the return on investment picture, going through the roof here. This is really, really key.
Yeah. This aligns really well with McKinsey's latest automation survey, which they published the results last week. And they said in there that the number one challenge companies have with intelligent automation is knowing what to automate. What's the next best automation? And as you've just said, that a fact-based approach, a data-driven approach using process mining, task mining is certainly a best practices way to address that.
And one extra point here, I think very often there's data available, but the data, and even if it's not the best quality and best completeness, the data is available. And very often the data is underutilized because in-house, it's difficult to get high quality data scientists that can really make sense of the data. So very often it's not like if people don't have the data, they do have the data, but it's highly difficult to make sense of this data, right?
Yeah.
So this is also not many people can really make sense of the data. And again, what we do that is a little bit different is once we have the insight, we have discovered the data. Again, we map it to a library of use cases. This way, we know exactly that if we can map it to an existing use case, we know with a certain level of confidence that we're going to be able to deliver a result. And this is really important, right? Getting the insight from the data and mapping it to real use cases that have been done before. When you map those two, you come up with a high level of confidence that you're going to be able to deliver something that makes a difference and will impact the business.
Well, OG, since you are based in France, I'd love to get your thoughts on what's going on with automation and AI in EMEA and compare that to the rest of the world. Give us a regional perspective, if you will.
Yes. And I could even go even one step below, because depending on where you are in Europe, there's again some differences. But
Sure.
overall, you know that in Europe, there's a lot of data privacy concern, right?
Yeah.
And again, I'm not going to really comment here, but the point, this is factual. Because of this data privacy concern, it is a lot more difficult to have access to data. So on one side, it's good because you can protect. On the other side, it's not so good because you don't really have access to data. And the whole point of AI is that if you don't have a good amount of data to feed your AI algorithm, then typically the AI is going to be less effective than if you have a large amount of data. So I think my view, and again, from a technology standpoint, I'm not going to talk about the people, the privacy of the people. I'm going to talk about the technology standpoint. This is a bit of a weakness in Europe because it's a lot more difficult to get access to data, right? And if you don't have access to data, if the data is anonymized, because by law in many countries, the data has to be anonymized, obviously you can understand that there's a lot of things we cannot do, let's say in Germany versus what we can do in Singapore or maybe in the US, right? So from that angle, it is a little bit of, let's say, weakness. But having said that, what we've seen is that the wave of automation started really strong in the UK, which is not Europe anymore, and started in the UK and in the US. And what we see is that the rest of Europe is really catching up, right? So we see Germany, we see France, we see Spain, Italy, all those countries are really catching up. So because everyone is starting to understand that you will not be able to survive, i.e. compete on the market, without having automation and AI on your side. So overall, we see that the European market is becoming very active. The appetite for automation is growing really fast. Obviously, there's a lot of, let me be direct here, there's a lot of high cost location in Europe. So obviously the business case is typically looking better than applying it to Asia. But what I see happening is, although maybe a few years back, Europe was really behind, I think that now everything is starting to, let's say, be at the same level. Whether I looked at North America, Latin America, Europe, Middle East, by the way, is very active as well on this technology, and Asia. I think that the market is starting to really globalize, and everyone is starting to jump on this because everyone understands that if you don't have that as a weapon, you will lose the edge that you have in your market at some point. And there's study done saying that if you don't correctly digitally transform your environment and apply automation and AI, you will probably not survive. That's just a fact as well.
Okay. Well, OG, I'd like to end our conversation today by just giving you a chance to share one example of a customer success story, perhaps involving outcomes-based approach. That would be really good to hear. So is there a story that is top of mind that you could share with us to bring it all home?
Yes, there's quite a few good story here, and I will anonymize this, but
yeah.
So we have a client in Europe, large client, $2 billion plus, and we are working with them, and we started with the IT department. And by the way, I do believe that it is good for the IT department to show the way. We have been discussing that you can automate finance, HR, but it's really nice for the IT department to automate itself so it can show the way to the other department inside a large company that IT is capable of doing it, therefore everyone else should do it, right? So that's sometimes we tend to underestimate the automation opportunity we have inside an IT department, but it is large, right? So we work with this large company, we approach them, we managed to get, they are using ServiceNow as a ticketing system. We managed to get access to their data. We did some data science analysis, and we came up with a pretty exciting opportunity that we faced over 3 years. So significant amount. And the thing here is, since we work with them, what we realized is that by working closely with them, we managed to gather a lot more information. We managed to improve how the data is being captured. We managed to improve the standard. The whole point here is to make the environment a lot more automation friendly so that you can increase the automation rate. Bottom line, after 6 months of this gain share model, this outcome-based model, working with them, we are now running at about 50% automation rate, which means that for the IT support department of a fairly large company, 1 ticket out of 2 is touched by automation. We talk about tens of thousands of tickets per month. So this is a pretty significant amount of automation that we were able to achieve by collaborating with the client. And obviously, this has a direct impact on the dollars they were spending to support the environment. And I'm not going to go into those numbers, but the point is, this is putting a big smile on our client CFO face, but not just. The client's customer also very happy because we saw all the KPI improving, the mean time to repair, the amount of, let's say, complaint has reduced. Because at the end of the day, automation is not just about cost. It's also about improving how you deal with something, bringing some consistency, bringing speed. And again, this is a very good case where not only we are able to improve the cost of delivery for that department, we are also improving all the other key, let's say, KPI that are actually directly, let's say, coming from this good support that our automation bots are doing for this client.
That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that here. Well, OG, it's been great having you on. I really appreciate you being on Transform Now today and sharing about IAC and your really unique approach to the advisory and consulting services that you provide. I think that's very innovative, very unique approach. I would expect more firms to be using that same approach going forward. So you guys are definitely a trendsetter. So thanks for being on, and I wish you the best.
Thank you. Thanks for your time as well. And again, if I may, I just want to leave a few things here. Remember, be technology agnostic and business centric. Have a top-down approach instead of a bottom-up approach, and think about establishing win-win with your client using an outcome-based model. Those are really disruptive way of looking at things. And trust me, this is really making a difference.
Great. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Transform Now. For more insightful discussions on digital transformation and more, check out our podcast channel where you'll find all of our previous episodes. And to make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player. And if you like what you've heard, please leave us a review. For more information about digital transformation and the future of work, check out blueprism.com to learn how SS&C Blue Prism's digital workforce is enabling enterprise transformation now.